You'd have to put glasses on. All right. I call this budget workshop of the Magnolia Independent School District to order. Let the record show that the quorum of board members is present, that this workshop has been duly called, and that notice of this workshop has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Everyone please stand while Mr. Blizzard leads us in the invocation, followed by the pledges.
If you would like to join us in prayer, that'd be great. Bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to gather. We just praise you and thank you for your grace and your mercy that you give us. And we just ask that you guide and direct us this evening and make the right decisions for the best interest of what goes on in the classroom and the campuses. And we just thank you for all the ways you bless us and protect us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We'll do the U.S. flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right. Ms. Hinkleman, do we have anybody signed up to speak? I think we do.
I'm sorry, what?
You know, sorry. We do have somebody signed up to speak.
Yes, sir, we do. Ms. Russell?
All right. So I have to read something before that. Participants must have turned in a request form 15 minutes prior to the start of this workshop. Participation is limited to 3 minutes. Those who have registered will be allowed to address the board only on those items posted in the agenda with notice of the workshop in accordance with board policy BED. So with that,
I just had do I need to get up there? I just had a question about the budget. I didn't know I would be asking before you presented. And my question has to do with the federal funding. I wanted to see what the grant money was that's in the federal funding thing. That was one question, then I had one more. Was this the time just to speak, or would you
Well, as
ask
long as
questions?
the item that you're asking about has to do with what he's talking about in the workshop. If it doesn't, then you're not allowed to ask it. It has to do with what he's talking about in the workshop.
I can tell you this, the board does not approve the federal fund budgets, so we will not present federal funds tonight.
You're not presenting
That's
federal
correct.
funds. Is it included in the budget that you're going to be showing?
No,
Oh, it's
because
not?
the board does not approve the federal budgets.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
all right. So we're
I'm through.
okay.
Thank you.
All right. So batter up, Dr. Morris.
Looks like I have an error on the first slide here, so bear with me. It was supposed to be July 19th. All right, guys. We'll do a budget workshop tonight, talk about tax rates, talk to you a little bit about where we plan to end this year. Some of the changes obviously didn't take effect just only in the classroom, but also in our bank account as well, with some of the ESSER money and so forth. But talk about 2021-22, and we'll also talk about some of the strategic positioning that we believe that we have set for the next couple of years and try to take advantage of some of the opportunity we have with some of the federal dollars as well. So first off, just gonna grab this. First off, projection for end of year, current year, obviously, there's been substantial changes since we adopted the budget. Just as a reminder, we've had no budget amendments to date. We adopted a balanced budget just over $120 million. And what you see before you there is an estimate for where we will end the current year. You'll see a variance notation on the right-hand side and then a description at the bottom of the page. We did have a couple of insurance claims associated with the freeze, and I think there was one other major one, which obviously increases our revenue and our expenses. And then tax collections were greater than budgeted, under HB 1525 and the old HB 3, all that means is the revenue shifts from state to local. So the end effect is nothing on the overall revenue, but it did increase locally. So then number 3, there was obviously some adjustment for stimulus money as well. In part, some of the money that we received from the state of Texas, or excuse me, from Montgomery County, was able to be utilized to help pay for one-time incentive pay that we had this past March and some of those other expenses. Okay, so the end product, and again, this isn't a surprise. It's something that we anticipated, given the changes throughout the year, that we will be contributing roughly a little over $5 million to the budget. But while that seems like, or excuse me, to the fund balance, and while that seems like a large number, I think when I show you in just a moment how we plan to utilize those funds and what we need to catch up, if you will, for enrollment purposes, it makes sense that we've been very strategic. Okay. So ultimately, we would be increasing the fund balance momentarily for a short term of around $5 million. Okay? Any questions on that? And just quickly to talk about just some of the dynamics. HB 1525 is obviously now into effect. Most of the components from HB 3 were maintained in terms of tax rate compression and so forth. And so in its simplest form, what that means is that the only way to increase revenue in our general fund is to add students. That's simply the only way for us to do that. As our tax values go up, the tax rate is compressed, and even when we generate more, and I'll show you a slide to that effect in just a moment, even if we generated more local revenue, the state aid goes down accordingly. And so until we get to the point where we're balanced for enrollment purposes, that's simply the only way that we increase revenue at this time. Okay. There was also, and I won't get too in depth with some of the changes of the individual funding components within HB 1525, but there actually was one that caused us to lose money. You may recall a couple of years ago, they established with HB 3 what's known as a formula transition grant, which is intended to make sure that districts would receive more revenue under HB 3 than under old law. And obviously, for us, we were sitting somewhat in the cat's bird seat for a while there with our property value growth and when state funding was based on prior year values. Okay, well, when HB 3 changed that, the new system was not as friendly to us, and so the formula transition grant basically made sure that most districts would receive 103% of what you would have received under old law, under new law. Okay. Well, they also knew that you couldn't sustain that for an extended period of time. So the formula transition grant is set to expire at the end of this next biennium. And for this coming biennium, for next year, they put a cap on the amount that TEA will fund for that. The end result for us is a loss of about $800,000. So there's that, okay? On the expenditure side of things tonight, and of course we can discuss this, but we've put together a budget that includes a fairly minimal 2% raise for all employees. And we also have scheduled or proposed 2 $1,000 one-time incentive pay for teacher retention purposes and employee retention purposes, and we'll get into some of that later to be funded with ESSER dollars. Okay. And so, guys, obviously along the lines of what generates revenue in our general fund these days, given the tax rate compression and inability to increase revenue any other route other than student enrollment growth, it's important that we, obviously try to project as accurate as possible and also remain conservative and balanced with our budget approach. This slide right here shows the demographer's most recent projection of student enrollment growth. projected to be an increase of 509 students this coming year, 352 students the following year. So what we've tried to do is to build a 2-year budget that is attempting to project relatively conservative, or very conservative, shall I say, student enrollment growth, and then use the committed fund balance that we're allocating this year to help us get to the point where the student enrollment growth will level out, if that makes sense. So for the next 2 years, basically, this budget proposal tonight, we are anticipating basically half, or not basically, but at half of what the demographers projected. So we're at around 250 and 176, or excuse me, 170, whatever that comes to. We believe that's conservative. I think it's important to note within this budget, because in current year, the things really got skewed as it relates to state funding and allocations, hold harmless and so forth, where, we were down 137 students, but the state is holding us harmless and paying us on a higher level of students, which is wonderful. And it's one of the reasons why we have the surplus in current year and why we're anticipating using that surplus in the next couple of years, okay? But what it also means is to get back, just to square where we're funded in current year. We really need to grow about 250 students. And so that's another reason why we think the budget that we put together is conservative, but it's also something that needs to happen at the same time. And so we all see the homes, we know that the kids are coming, and I think that's the other good thing about putting together a 2-year synopsis. Because even if you're not quite, where you anticipate you'll be at the end of 1 year, the odds are at the end of 2, over that 2-year span, you will be at those numbers, okay? Sorry, I spent so long on this. So, what we have in front of you here is again, like I said, a 2-year synopsis where we're utilizing the committed fund balance from 2021 school year over the next couple of years with a conservative student enrollment growth. And the 2% raise built in, because basically, we lost some revenue when you remove the one-time anomalies from the county and ESSER money. And basically what we did was we removed the 2 one-time incentive pays from current year, and we added a 2% raise to the general fund, where we're paying the other out of federal or ESSER money for this coming year. So, the end result, like I said, is utilizing that fund balance, that roughly $4.8 million that we're anticipating needing, putting it in there. And so we've got a 2-year budget that includes a 2% raise each year, and, excuse me, 2 $1,000 retention incentives in each of those years. Okay? Now, of course, there are expenses associated with more students if they were to show up, but if we were to far exceed our estimate, we could potentially do more in the subsequent year. But I think this is conservative. And then something we talked about in May, guys. If you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see that wanted to include, sort of what the state aid would look like if we hit the demographer projection in each of those individual years. And so you'll see the second to last column shows the additional state aid that we would have in each of those years on a year-by-year basis. And then the last row actually shows the cumulative effect of that. So let's say at the end of the second year, we're at the top of the page, we're using $2.3 million from our contributed fund balance from 2021. You can see that that's the mark that we need to hit. So if we hit the demographer mark in both years, we would have generated $3.7 million more than what we have built into this budget. So again, we think that's conservative, but we also know at the end of the third year, we've got expenses associated with some of the salaries that we added with some of the ESSER money that we would like to maintain. So there's that as well. But yeah, but you see at the bottom there that even in the third year, and I didn't even put a third year budget because, the legislature will be between now and then again. So But you'll see how much more additional revenue we would generate under the demographer projection at the bottom of the page. Any question on that? So obviously, each year when we talk about, the budget, still remains true that roughly 82% of our budget, payroll employee benefits. So I know the board, wants us to do our homework to compare to other surrounding schools and what they're paying and the raises given and so forth. So this view right here actually shows all of the districts in Region 6, Huntsville and Region 4, which we are often compared to, but we are not exactly, downtown Houston either. But you'll see we compare fairly favorably as you start out 0 year. 15 year, we actually make up some ground, and that's something that just happens throughout time. I wouldn't pay much attention to the highest salary. That's all based on the interpretation of the submitter. So, but you'll see that we do compare favorably. I know obviously the board has kept up with headlines, but let's see. I think Conroe did 3% for the teachers and 2% for everyone else, if I recall correctly. Tomball did 2% to midpoint for all employees. Montgomery did a little bit somewhat higher than that after making some other cuts that they thought that were needed as well. KDISD did 2% for all employees as well. So I think that obviously we've been aggressive as it relates to the retention bonuses and protecting our bottom line for future purposes by using those as one-time expenses. We certainly, prior to HB3, we had 4% raises for 4 or 5 years in a row, and yet, I think right now the norm you're going to see around 2 or 3%, and that's just the way it is because of the inability to increase revenue, really, except for additional teachers. So, with the two $1,000 bonuses, I think a 2% is reasonable in comparison to some of our friends, if you will. Any questions on this?
Eric?
Yes, sir.
So even with the 2% raise, we're still, roughly 4% behind our competitors. And I hear that we're going to give a 2% raise. Everyone else is giving at least a 2% raise. So we're not making up any ground on any of those competitors. So, Magnolia teachers are still be paying a little bit less than the teachers around us.
Yes, sir. That's an accurate statement. Were we to maintain the 2%. Now, I think, obviously we have some other benefits that we outpace, some of our competitors. Again, I don't know how many of those are doing the large one-time incentive pay, which is a large thing. But I've got a couple of slides here in a minute that talks about some of the other benefits with daycare costs and things of that nature we provide. But Mr. Duncan, you're accurate. Obviously, this is status quo. This is current year, and we know that others are giving the raises that they're giving. And so, even if we just held pace, we would be basically comparable at this time next year.
So if the comment's made that we're overpaying our teachers compared to the people around us, that's not a factor.
Yes, sir, that's simply not true. As a matter of fact, I know Montgomery had to make some tough decisions to give the heavy raises that they gave, but they're on our heels now. A first-year teacher, it's almost exactly the same. So we would anticipate our first-year teacher will go to roughly $55,000, and that puts us behind. Narrowly. We're still competitive, but yes, sir, that's an accurate statement.
But with the bonuses, we think we're at least attempting to get competitive, but we're not locking the district into a situation where later on we might get into financial peril.
I think that's a perfect way to put it, Mr. Duncan, and ultimately it's buying us some time to see where things land this next year. We built a conservative budget, but we're also using committed fund balance to help fund it, and so it's going to be very meaningful for us to look at the end of October and see where we are student enrollment wise and things of that nature. And I think by remaining conservative with those recurring costs, remember we waited till this time to finally remove the one-time expenses just so we could afford the 2% this coming year. by utilizing some of the ESSER money for those one-time incentive pay. Yes, sir, I mean, it's conservative. So, yes, sir.
So $2,000 divided by 57,000 average is about 3.5%. So that totals 5.5% nominally, one time. Part of it's one time, part of it goes on.
Yes, sir. That's a great way to put it, Mr. Blizzard. And I talked with Mr. Deavies, and we talked about some of our operations folks. Obviously, you put that in perspective, a $1,000 pay to some of our custodians who are making, $9 or $10 an hour and so forth, and even some of our bus drivers. If you look at that, I mean, percentage-wise, it could be a 12 to 14% increase in pay in 1 year. Now, obviously, we've been fairly aggressive with those one-time incentive pays the last several years, but that's not something that you can count on every year, and we try to make sure that our folks understand that. So, but by giving 2 $1,000 bonuses, I think that's huge, in particular for our hourly people.
Do we have a split yet on who chose the more cost-effective health plan that we rolled out last year?
We are right, Ms. Baker, right in the middle of open enrollment, but the numbers we're seeing so far, and I've got a couple of slides I'll show you in just a moment on that we've been able to maintain good pricing for that. We believe participation is going up. It is on the district-sponsored plan. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's more money in their pocket
It
too.
is, and again, I'll show you that in just a moment.
Great.
Yeah, there's a lot going on this page, so we have to move.
I really
So,
did not see
yeah,
that.
and this actually works well, Christy, to slide into this, but, I'm not going to go into depth on this, but the state-sponsored plan, the TRS Active Care Plan is on the left-hand side of the page. The district-sponsored plan is on the right-hand side, and for comparison purposes, I've got those color-coded to be the most congruent, if you will, in comparing the two. So, the most important thing on here when we're building our plan this year, so let's just compare the orange, which is the HD plan for each of those. So for premium purposes, you'll see that we very intentionally told the program that we wanted to continue to pay 100% of employee-only HD premium, okay? And obviously understanding that some of those employees are some of our lowest paid potentially, and we wanted to keep money in their pocket. So we didn't increase the district allotment. We're still giving $350 for all of our employees who participate in either plan. But you can see that there's still no cost to the individual on that plan, which is a big deal. And as you look down the page, you can also see that the deductibles are very comparable to the TRS Active Care Plan as well. So the other part of that, we've got the UBC plan, the alternate medical plan offers, we have an in-house clinic down 1488 where every visit is free, or the cost is passed on to the district, shall we say. There's no cost to the employee. So that's a big deal, and going back to some of our statements a moment ago, and I think this is something that sets us apart when we look at our teacher pay, where we're narrowly behind some of our friends. There's not very many districts that offer 2 plans, and of course the legislature tried to make it difficult for anyone to do that this past session. But we believe we're grandfathered because this board decided to take that on a year ago. So, kudos to us for doing that. But I do think this is a huge benefit for sure.
Eric, I can tell you that someone whose daughter just signed up for another district's plan,
Yes, sir.
she would have loved to have had our plan. And I mean that sincerely. I mean, it doesn't compare
It's,
to what we're offering. It's a disaster.
Well,
some of these people-
I'm on the all medical. I can't be more of a fan than having it myself. It's Cigna sponsored, which means coverage is fantastic. Texas Children's is under it, and it's a large benefit.
And it's nationwide.
Yes,
I mean,
it
there's
is.
a lot of out of network. I mean,
Yes.
there's just a lot of things we're offering that other people are not offering.
100%. Yes, sir.
Are we close to 70% of our?
Yes, sir. This past year, we were right at 60 to 65%. And our target this year, we're really hoping to get close to 80%. And we're seeing that number trickle up. I hate to jump out there too much because it's not over, I think, until August 6th, so we have a few days left.
So
But I'll get that back
they
to
are
you. I'll email
utilizing,
you.
it's
Good.
being used.
Yeah.
That's good.
we've really tried to promote Dr. Patel as well. The folks who go to him think he's awesome. He's a good doctor. So also along those lines, as we talk about other benefits, I think it's important to remember some of these. We have the all medical plan, and for affordable child daycare. I mean, it's $50 a month for support staff and $180 a month for teachers and admin. Now, I challenge anyone to go out and compare that to the normal world, I guess you could say, because I know firsthand the last couple of years. We have free transportation, child daycare, affordable in-house after-school program, so forth, competitive stipend pay. And again, we have a trend of some pretty phenomenal retention pay as well. So, so before I shift into talking about some of the debt service stuff and so forth, I wanted to show just a couple of slides, and more of this will be, I guess, presented August 23rd when we do the budget hearing. But sometimes we ask ourselves, well, how do we spend our money versus the average district in the state of Texas? And so I wanted to provide a couple of slides here with a couple of different views. Obviously, you guys are used to adopting the budget by function, and so as you look down this list here, you'll see Magnolia ISD, and of course, the most important thing is percentage. Because unfortunately, we're still behind by about $150 per student versus the average district in the state of Texas. So that's important to remember as well. But as you look down the list here, one of the things we've always prided ourselves on is we spend more money in the classroom than most districts. We spend just over 60% versus most district average is 58.8. Excuse me. And also general administration, we're lower than the average district in the state of Texas as well, 3.65 versus 3.09. So that's something we wanted to point out. Then there's another view here that we don't show very often, but it's by program intent. And I don't know that anything really necessarily on this page jumped out at me or surprised me, but suffice to say that obviously in terms of our students with disabilities, program intent 23, we certainly take care of our special ed students. We spend roughly 15% of our budget versus the average district spending 12%. So that's probably the biggest disparity that I see on this page. Okay, and we can go back and talk about budget in just a moment, but wanted to transition a little bit and talk about our bonded indebtedness, which our board knows is voted on by our voters to build new facilities and so forth. And so I wanted to show a couple of views of that. Obviously, we've had a very aggressive bond defeasance plan where we paid that off early and refunded and so forth. And so this is our current debt structure. I think obviously the most important thing here is you see the large decrease in the 29 school year, which generates an extra $6 million for future bond capacity. And with shortening the amortization on the refunding we did this past year, we reduced the longest amortization, if you will, by 2 years from 2041 to 2039. Okay, I've got some more information on that.
Just to clarify?
Yes, ma'am.
And that is all voter-approved debt?
That's correct, yes, ma'am. Bonded indebtedness approved by the voters. So, I know this is a slide that we've used the last couple of years, and so I wanted to, just as a reminder, to show some of the things that we've done the last couple of years with our 2015 bond, with the shorter amortization that we use versus the industry norm. Some of our refundings, obviously this past year, we saved $28.5 million by our bond refunding, and also wiped off almost $12 million in principal and shortened the amortization by 2 years. So it's something we focus on. I know it's something the board believes in heavily, and so we're going to continue to do what we can to reduce debt and save our taxpayers dollars. For the district, in comparison to ourselves, you look back 10 years ago, we were at $13,600 per student, then it increased in 2015 with a bond. But with our aggressive bond defeasance plan the last couple of years, we've got that to a 10-year low of just over $10,400. $400, excuse me. So another view on that, how we compare to our peers, and we're certainly not here to throw rocks. Every district's different, in a different situation with student enrollment growth and voters and so forth. But we're very proud of our position as it relates to debt per student, bonded indebtedness per student. We're at roughly $10,500 at the end of the 2021 school year, and you can see where some of our friends are.
I like that chart.
I know that's Miss Eagle's chart.
That's my favorite.
Got copyright on it.
Yes.
Well, Eric, I've got to say something about that chart also, why I think that's so phenomenal. If you look at the fact that we get about $150 less per student, that hurts our district to about $1.8 million a year. And then if you look that we spend extra on SPED, there's about an extra $3 million that we spend. So compared to other districts, that hurts us to about $5 million a year, and yet we've driven our debt down to significantly lower than any other district around us that I can see.
Accurate, Mr. Duncan. I couldn't agree more, 100%.
So I'd say so far, the shepherding of the dollars has done very well.
Thank you, sir.
I would add the Conroe district is the biggest one by far on here. And I mean, we're almost half of them on a per student basis. They've got a ton of students to spread it out on. Right?
Yes, sir, and I included a couple of the larger districts for that purpose. So Mr. Blizzard, obviously Soccer, Katy, they're not right next door, but obviously given the size, it's important to look at that scale too.
They've got a huge.
Yes, sir.
And Tomball's going out for like $500 million. I think.
Yes, theirs will go
So
up
that number's
substantially
gonna
if
rocket.
it passes. Yes, sir. Any other questions on that? Taxable property values. We received our certified values a little over a week ago. Anticipate those going up right at 10%, or about $700 million. About $278 million of that is for new construction, which is wonderful. But here's just a trend, and I kind of mentioned this earlier on the M&O side. I think it's, again, important to note that regardless of property value increase, it doesn't mean that we have more revenue for M&O purposes. It does mean that we have additional funds for INS, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Excuse me. So here's a tax rate history, which includes our proposed rate that we're prepared to propose tonight. We're proposing almost a 9-cent decrease in the property tax rate this evening, and we'll go into more detail here in just a moment. But I think it's obviously important to note that after 4 years of the same tax rate at $1.38, we're proposing the third year in a row to decrease the tax rate. And again, I've got more information on that in just a moment. So let's talk about the property values and tax rates just a moment. Current year M&O rate, 94 cents, INS at 34 cents. What we are proposing is an M&O rate of 87.77, which obviously is set by compression. But we're also proposing a 3 cent decrease on the INS, as we believe we could meet our debt requirements at the 30 cent mark with our property value growth. So we're proposing a decrease of 8.7 cents this evening. Now, based on that, if you look in the far right two columns, this came from Ms. Tammy McCrae's office. The average taxable value went up $15,483. Based on the percentage decrease exceeding the percentage increase for taxable value purposes, that means that the average homeowner will pay less in taxes by $59.
Even though it went up 10%?
Yes, that's correct. Questions on that?
Can you repeat that again?
Yes, ma'am. Basically, there's two components. There's the average taxable value and the tax rate. And the average taxable value of home went up or right at $15,483, which is about 5.5%. But the total tax rate went down right at 7%. So when that percentage exceeds the value increase, then that means the average homeowner will pay less in taxes. Okay, excuse me just one second. So I wanted to include this slide. I don't think we're going to have the quirky no new revenue rate language this year, thanks to our proposed tax rate. But I did want to show this. This is from the state aid template. This is not my work. This is from TEA. But I think it shows a pretty good picture of the revenue and how our M&O revenue works. So at the top of the page, you'll see current year, and at the bottom of the page, you'll see next year. And so with property value increase and with tax rate compression, you'll see that our local revenue went up about $800,000, but the state aid went down the same amount. So again, as it relates to generating more revenue on our M&O side, there's only one way to do it, and that's with additional students.
So at this point in time, meantime, that's local aid's going to go up. The state's just going to take it from us.
Correct, yes, sir.
So our local
Under current law, which is the next 2 years.
right. So our local residents aren't going to get sharing that for our school district, or it's going to go to somebody else's school district somewhere else.
Yes, sir.
And so the only way we can increase is by having more students.
More students.
That's it?
At this point, yes, ma'am. That's the system that we're under. I mean, you know, and obviously HB3 was huge. I mean, we received an extra $10 million the first year, but it was a 1 year extremely large increase. And then after that, the funding components basically worked as the old funding formula did, with the added component of tax rate compression. So it's difficult to generate additional revenue for M&O, but we're in as good a position as any because we have anticipated growth and so forth. And we plan well by, you know, using one-time expenses for one-time incentives and so forth within our budget. So I think we're well prepared, but it's challenging. It's a challenging system.
I think a lot of our community will be surprised to hear that, you know, if the local dollars go up, the state dollars go down.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think most people understand that.
All right.
Gotta get the word out.
Shiny teeter-totter.
Yeah, I think, I know my friends would be very surprised to hear that.
This is about as clear as I can make it on this
Yeah.
slide right here, which is why I included it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So Eric, remind me, how much was the average Montgomery County appraisal district value bump? What was that number?
The average was 5.5%.
Okay.
5.5%, and the decrease on the tax rate is 7%, or roughly 7%.
Right.
I was 10%, to put it in perspective.
Yeah.
And yes, I did try to fight it.
Me too, and I'm still fighting.
So obviously, for next steps, guys, I mean, we'll you know, in tonight's regular session, we'll ask you to set the date and time for the meeting, for the public hearing on August 23rd. And we'll also ask you in the regular meeting to approve the proposed rate for the newspapers. Not adopting the rate, that won't happen until after the public hearing on August 23rd. And that sort of wraps up the you know, budget workshop, unless there's any questions.
Remind me how many years we've had a balanced budget? It's been a long time.
Well, I've been here 13 years, and we've had a balanced budget all of those years, and you know, a review of the last few years before that, they were balanced as well. So at least 13 years.
And with that time, we've saved the district almost $30 million in interest payments by reducing the debt.
That was this year alone. Yes, sir. We've saved much more than that.
Yeah.
Much more than that. Yes, sir. I'll go back to this slide right here. This is just a brief history. And on the right, you can see how much we saved in each of those refundings.
It's a lot of money
Yes, ma'am.
to save.
Anybody else have any? All right, well then I need a motion that we adjourn this workshop. Motion by Joe, seconded by Christie. All in favor? 6:22. So we'll adjourn for a few minutes here and then start back up.
Well done, sir.
And we'd like you to always give them a special blessing. We know the risks that they take on a daily basis. We know the protection they provide on a daily basis. We know what good men and women they are, and we ask you just to wrap your arms around them and their families. Always give them safety, always give them comfort, always give them grace. Lord, just please love on them and take care of them. Lord, we thank you for our community. We thank you for our teachers. We thank you for our administrators. Lord, we ask you to bless our local area and bless our country right now. We certainly need it. We need all the blessings you can give us, all the mercy you can give us, all the grace you can give us, and all the wisdom you can give us. Please help us in our meeting tonight to make decisions that will honor you and help our district. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We'll do the American flag first. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right, Ms. Hinkleman, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, sir, you have those in front of you.
Okay, so I need to read a statement and then we'll get started. I think these are in the order that they came in.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. Participants must have turned in a request form 15 minutes prior to the start of this meeting. Participation is limited to 3 minutes. Any complaint or charge brought against an employee by name, opposition for which resolution has not been sought in accordance with policy should be pursued through the district's grievance policy. Please note, the Board of Trustees shall not deliberate, respond, or make decisions regarding any subject that is not included on the agenda that is posted. All right, so with that, Ms. Russell, I think you're first up. And since we're not at the other location, I know last time there was something here that had your time, Ms. Hinkleman will let you know.
Good evening. Sadly, America's education system has been radically transformed. It is no longer about instilling knowledge of core academics, giving students an equal opportunity to succeed. Due to the radical agenda of the federal education reforms like Goals 2000, No Child Left Behind, and the Every Student Succeeds Act, today's public ed is built around social engineering the next generation by fundamentally altering students' values, attitudes, beliefs, and behavior. Despite what you call it, Common Core, C-Scope, social emotional learning, international baccalaureate, etc., the pedagogy behind it all are all one and the same: social constructivism, created by Soviet psychologist Lev Vygotsky. Vygotsky proposed the socialist altercation of man. I've addressed this board and emailed you all repeatedly regarding the Marxist ideology embedded in IB. Today, I've not received one response, with the exception of one hateful, childish email that failed to address my concerns and that IB supports the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, intending to nudge us towards globalist agenda of a one-world government, supports the United Nations Earth Charter, which is humanity's covenant with the earth. The charter is housed inside a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. Can we say paganism here? IB is molded around the philosophy of liberalism, humanism. IB promotes the Marxist ideologies of social justice, diversity, equity, global citizenship, critical race theory, international mindedness, and redistribution of wealth. Could it be this board does not understand the core tenets of Marxism, moral relativism, paganism, etc., behind the reform? If that's the case, I can accept that, but you have shown no sign of addressing what I see are viable concerns. Speaking to the board is futile. As with C-Scope, I have been met with wrath or silence. As with C-Scope, I have found there is more than one way to skin a cat, and that is to inform we the people. President Ronald Reagan said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. I will continue to fight for America's founding principles of individualism, liberty, and future generations, for the future generations. Globalism is Satan's plan. It was never God's plan." In Genesis 10 and 11, you will find the first globalist is Nimrod. who along with others attempted to create their own society and building the Tower of Babel. How'd that work out? I guess you have to
Ms. Russell,
decide
your
for
time is
yourself
up.
if you want to be instrumental
Ms. Russell,
in
time
working
is up.
toward God's plan
Your
or
time is up,
Satan's.
man. All right, Mr. Russell.
I'll finish what Ginger was trying to say whenever y'all having the coder off there. She said in Genesis 10:11, you find the first globalist, Nimrod, who along with others attempted to create his own society in building the Tower of Babel. And how that worked out, and I guess you need to decide for yourself if you want to be an instrument in working towards God's plan or Satan's. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, silence in the face of evil is in itself evil. I don't know why that you guys sit here and hear this over and over and over again, and you never do anything about it. Just like Ginger said, you never respond, you never reach out, you never ask questions. You just sit there and just roll on. And I don't know why you're so in love with International Baccalaureate. And I know that I know the things that you say that it does. What's going to get my kid into Harvard? Well, I don't want my kids going to Harvard. Or it's a rigorous, it teaches them how to think for themselves. Well, it also teaches them to be global citizens. We live in a unique and wonderful country, and we're not going to always match up with international standards and ideas and values and beliefs. In the International Baccalaureate program, even if you don't teach their curriculum, you have to teach their values and beliefs. Their beliefs about Christianity, they want Christianity the same as the Taliban. They said that if it's a religion that believes that there's one true God, then that is not to be accepted. They go for pantheism, and they want that to be the one world religion. It's like the all roads lead to heaven. Well, all roads don't lead to heaven. Narrow is the way that leads to righteousness, and wide is the gate that leads to destruction. Pray before we started. I think most of you call yourself Christians. The IB is not going to promote Christianity. It's going to lead us into one world religion. That's its design. And if you guys are not able to see Marxism and critical race theory, social justice, intersectionality, all of those things that are coming at our students day in and day out, and if you can't see the change in America in the last 20 or 30 years, then you're just not looking. We're being transformed every day, and the biggest transformation is happening in our schools and in our colleges. Our colleges are loaded with Marxist and communist professors. That's not an opinion, that is a fact. And our kids need to be prepared to defend themselves against that ideology that they're trying to teach our kids, because they're there for a reason. The Marxists and communists are not in their colleges because they love kids and they just want to be teachers. They want to change America. They want to revolutionize America and bring about a Marxist nation. They don't appreciate the free enterprise system.
Mr. Russell, your time is up.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Mr. James Nelson.
Good evening. I want to talk about what's right in this school district. I'm tired of hearing negative all the time. I've supported most of y'all in your bid to run for school board. I'm not real positive on public education. Y'all know that I'm a homeschooler. My grandkids have never been to a public school. But having said that, I think the best school district in the state of Texas is Magnolia High State, because I know y'all. And I know how much care you put into and much thought you do and how you've educated yourselves to become the best school district that you can. And that goes for you too, Mr. Stevenson. I have watched you study, I have watched you struggle, I have watched you sacrifice. And I have nothing but admiration for what I've seen here and all of y'all. I really appreciate appreciate how you squeeze the juice out of every penny that we give you. That means a lot to me because we're not mortgaging 10 years down the road. We're preparing for 10 years down the road when we have a massive increase that students say will happen. I heard once somebody referred to someone that I do not respect as a renowned educational expert. Well, I submit to you that these are renowned public educational experts who have trained themselves to be that. And it's hard to find a negative in this school district. Oh, you can make it up. But a real negative, hard to find. These are experts over here too. I want to thank you for what you do. I've watched you do it. If I did not see the good that I see, I would not support you. But I do see that good. And I'm going to do it as long as I see that good. And I know you'll do the best job that you possibly can. Thank you.
All right, next we have Sunday Sylvie. Did I say that right?
I didn't come do this, but I sat up for 3 hours last night because I've asked schools, are you teaching CRT? Are you teaching that? Oh, no, we're not. Well, I took 3 hours. I had to go through passwords. I had to work around things just to get the things on different school districts also. But it ultimately all comes down to, you can change it, you can, the names of it, you can distribute it out. No matter how you do it, everywhere you look, it is strictly CRT, all through every curriculum, everywhere you look. And I was just downright angry, and I don't know how y'all don't see that as wrong. You know, we live in America. Why would we even want to live in a communist world? That's ridiculous. I don't have a lot to say, I don't know how anybody could do that. And you can change it ever how you want, and distribute it, it's CRT. You're teaching Marxism.
All right, next we have Cindy Phillips.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I just wanted to discuss the same things that you just heard with Sunday initially, is the CRT, the ideas of CRT that's being taught to our kids. I mean, a lot of this is fairly new for me because I was one trying to live my life, and then November 2020 happened, and we all know that. But anyway, so ever since then I've been looking at what is happening. Well, how did we get here? How have we gotten so lost and divided? How have we gone backward? We've gone backward. MLK did not teach this. He did not teach this. He didn't say, what's the color of your skin? And, oh, well, you're going to be oppressed forever. That was exactly the opposite. So, and now we have IB. I'd never even heard of it. I had never even heard of it. And after looking at it, it's nothing more than a Marxist indoctrination. Instead of teaching the moral ideas of the 10 Commandments, and students are indoctrinated with the UN's 10 learner profile values, their quote, of world citizenship. It all sounds very noble until you look further into what the UN's goals are for world citizens. It's nothing more than trying to usher in the New World Order or one world government. How does one world government work? Like you heard before, America is a unique country. We're all unique countries. Why do we want the one world government? That is exactly what the IB program is teaching them. That's the underlying theme. And to boot, in America, the taxpayers are footing the bill for our kids to have their own demise through this. And do we want to look back one day and find that we played a critical part in this? Or would we rather find ourselves looking back and you guys have a part to play in this? You could help to save our future generations from this. I just implore you. I agree. I was pleased to hear the prayer. I am a Christian. I believe that God is sovereign. I believe that God is in control, but I also know that He expects us to do our part as well. And so I'm just imploring you to please follow through with this and let's end this. Let's end this indoctrination. We can only control where we are. We can't control anything going on federally in DC, but we can control our neighborhood, in our communities. We can control that, and I'm asking you to please do your part. Thank you.
All right, Anna Greathouse.
Good evening to each of you. I see 3 faces up here that my kids have grown up with. Thank you for being here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anna Greathouse, and all 3 of my sons graduated from Magnolia High School. My youngest this past May. I'm here tonight to thank you for everything you do to provide top-notch schools and programs for my kids and thousands others in Magnolia. For the last 8 years, we have been subjected to hearing a lot of misinformation about our schools, students, teachers, and sadly even about you and your families. Information that's been spread throughout the community to create hatred, fear, and division between the people, good people that live here. As my last son goes on to his bright future that your hard work has helped to prepare him for, I came tonight to thank you for not getting sidetracked by the constant lies being told about MISD. I talk fast and I walk fast, and I'm slowing down here a little bit tonight. You have not let it distract you from the good work that you do in our community, has repeatedly elected you to do year after year. You have stayed focused on giving our kids every available tool and opportunity to take them wherever they want to go in life. And you have been the best possible stewards for our tax dollars in that process. It would be wonderful if the yellow sheets of paper being stuck on doors and mailboxes and littering our property every election season, and the never-ending spam emails would contain facts instead of propaganda. Facts about the extraordinary accomplishments our kids have coming through this Magnolia system. Facts about our district's fiscal responsibility under the leadership, including earning the state's highest transparency rating year after year and having the lowest debt per student rate in the area by far. Facts about trailblazing conservative actions of this board, like removing masks before any other district did and speaking out against critical race theory, not allowing it to be taught in our schools long before legislature outlawed it. Telling the truth about the superior job that all of you do for our community would not help the yellow paper people to get you voted out and replaced by someone who does not support public schools, whose goal is to destroy them from the inside and out and our children's futures right alongside them. That is the ultimate goal, that is the ultimate desired outcome of the horrible things that have been done to you and about you and all of you and your children in our schools. I came here tonight to tell you that the people who know our schools from the inside know the truth about our schools and your service to them. For 8 years, Magnolia voters have showed up and overwhelmingly rejected the candidates who have been recruited to run against you. A group of candidates that have mostly been made up of people with personal or political agendas or both, who have little or no working knowledge about the public school system. And I pray that the voters continue to show up in huge numbers to help you fight to protect our Magnolia children. My family thanks you for standing strong to defend our kids and teachers. Although we recently moved from Magnolia, we will continue to pray for a hedge of protection around each of you and this amazing community that will always be near and dear to my family's heart. Thank you for all that you do, and God bless you. Thank you.
All right, next is Grant Evil.
Hello, my name is Grant, and I've lived in Magnolia most of my life. I'm a recent graduate of Magnolia West High School, where I graduated valedictorian and was a member of the IB program. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican, here to speak about my personal experience in the IB program. IB is an optional 2-year advanced academic program for junior and senior students offered at both Magnolia High Schools. The program provides guaranteed 24 college credits to students attending Texas colleges, and many scholarships are available specifically to IB students. The classes within the program are different than others in that they focus on discussion-based learning, independent study, and spoken or written examination. In addition to this, most IB courses last 2 years, allowing students a deeper understanding of the given subject, whether it be mathematics, biology, computer science, or economics. In Luke 6:43-45, Jesus teaches us to judge a tree by the fruit that it bears. Let us judge IB in the same manner. At West, 6 of the top 10 graduates in my class were in the IB diploma program. This fall, IB graduates from West will be attending top universities across the country. Let me tell you about a few of my IB classmates. Jack has been commissioned to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point. Quentin has received a full ride scholarship to study computer science at the University of Alabama. Dylan will be attending Notre Dame, and Grace will be diving at Ohio University as a Division I student athlete. While in Magnolia West's IB program, not once was Marxism promoted or encouraged. In fact, we were taught quite the opposite. In my IB economics class, we learned about the benefits of the capitalist free market system in terms of its abilities to stimulate innovation and efficiency through competition and profit incentive. In my IB history class, we spent several months learning about the atrocities and horrors of communist dictatorships in the 20th century. We learned that in 100 years of communism, the political ideology has been responsible for the death of 100 million people. In English, we read the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, my favorite Christian apologetics author. Now, I would ask you why a supposedly Marxist or socialist program would teach students about the benefits of capitalism, the horrors of communism, and expose us to Christian authors and their works. To close, I would like to thank you, the district, for offering IB to high school students who choose to pursue this rigorous program among the many other pathways students may take during their time in MISD. Thank you.
All right, next we have Olivia Bigler.
Hello, my name is Olivia and I have the privilege of living in Magnolia since 7th grade. I recently graduated this spring in the top 5% of my class from Magnolia West High School, where I was a participant in the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program my junior and senior year. Today I'm here to speak about my personal experience in the IB program. First, I would like to speak about what the IB program is not. During my first 2 years in the program, there was never any promotion of Marxist or any extremist worldview. I can confidently say I was never pressured with an agenda of any kind. In fact, my IB history and economics teacher stated on many occasions how communism doesn't work. The International Baccalaureate Organization does not have a strict core curriculum that students must pursue. Instead, the organization believes that only the individual communities IB exists within can implement IB in a way that's in keeping with their local needs and values. For this very reason, there is not a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to the curriculum, but over 40 courses to choose from with multiple options for a focus of study in each course. It is the Magnolia West teachers of each course that decide how and what information would be the most beneficial and relevant for their students to learn. During my time in the IB program, no teacher or course ever promoted anti-American thinking. In fact, the Military Child Education Coalition, an organization dedicated to addressing the needs of children of U.S. military personnel, has made statements saying that the IB program is for the rigorous and worthwhile curriculum for the children of U.S. service members. This information is supported by my own peer in the IB program, Jack Wilson, who is an Eagle Scout, the son of a Purple Heart recipient, and will be attending West Point Military Academy this fall. He will be graduating as an officer and serving at least 10 years for our country. It is important to ask why someone who is willing to sacrifice their life for the United States would support and participate in a program that is supposedly indoctrinating students with un-American ideals. The IB program is a completely optional pathway for students in their last 2 years of high school, looking for a unique education that will not only challenge them, but prepare them for what lies ahead. It is one thing to read about the IB program online, and another to experience it firsthand. I would like to illuminate that neither my classmates nor myself had an issue with the instruction from our IB teachers in our IB classes. Rather than trusting blog posts or email chains from unreliable sources, I encourage you to talk to current and former students of Magnolia IB programs. I believe that the IB program has helped me to greatly improve in my problem-solving, reading and writing skills, and overall confidence. It is my opinion that stripping future students of their freedom to choose what kind of education they would like to receive would be an un-American decision. Thank you.
All right. Next we have Susan Scruggs.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak this evening. I've not spoken to you before, but I've been to some meetings. I'm a Magnolia ISD taxpayer, have been for about 11 years. I came to speak to you tonight, and I heard these wonderful reports from the kids about IB. However, the basis of IB is not the wonderful reports that you've heard. Maybe they had a good experience, and I'm happy. I hope that you did. And I trust that you did because of what you said. However, if you look into the IB program, it is not as lovely as they explained. It is based on a worldview. It embraces a worldview. It has close ties to the United Nations, and it teaches children and young people the value of global citizenship. Further, it focuses on international issues and encourages children from ages 3 to 19 to have tolerance and understanding for the rest of the world, even though tolerance of freedom of speech, legitimate elections, freedom of religion, buying and selling is often non-existent in many of these countries around the world. And I have been to many of these countries on business around the world and viewed what goes on in business. I have not located anything in the IB program that reinforces America's exceptionalism. I did not see in the IB program that our great America was held up as an example of a free society succeeding in all areas, because in America, we have the freedom to work hard, sacrifice, get an education or trade, pour ourselves into something, and most of the time it succeeds. American exceptionalism is the idea that the USA is uniquely free as a nation based on democratic ideals and personal liberty. Where else in the world can you find it? I have not found it, and I have been many places. Also, looking at the readiness scores in Magnolia ISD for 2019, I was appalled. The readiness score for reading for the ACT in 2019 was 15%. 15%. Readiness score for the SAT was 42%. The readiness score for reading for Texas Success Initiative was 39%. I took this off your website. For math, the readiness score for ACT in 2019 was 15%. The readiness math score for SAT was 31%. The Texas Success Initiative criteria performance was 69%. These scores are dismal. They are disappointing. And according to my data, the 2021 scores are even lower because of lockdowns and because of online learning. And I've seen some of the scores across in other schools.
Time is up.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, next is Kenneth Ernest, I think is the last one.
Evening, board. I'm Kenneth Ernest. I'm here to just basically read or present what passed the Montgomery County Republican Party's Executive Committee. So there's a resolution, and forgive me that I'm going to read it. America's constitutional republic is being transformed from within. America's public education system is no longer about providing a solid academic course of study based on reading, writing, math, science, history, and government. Today, our government-run schools use methods like social emotional learning or international curriculum, as in the International Baccalaureate program. Both SEL and the International Baccalaureate are a fundamental shift in education, changing from a transmission of knowledge that parents still expect from their schools to an emphasis on alienating students' attitudes, values, beliefs, and behavior in order to install a radical new and oftentimes contradictory politically correct value system, such as radical environmentalism, radical feminism, critical theory, Marxism, social justice, population control, class struggle, socialism, climate change, hyper-racialism, and more. America's government education system has succumbed to this detrimental pedagogy. I always have trouble with this word. Pedagogy. Thank you. And of social engineering. So here are the whereas. Whereas the Texas Republican Party platform states plain 137, national core curriculum, we oppose the use of national or international standards in the state of Texas, i.e. Common Core, C-Scope, United Nations, inclusion, etc. Whereas the International Baccalaureate Organization is a non-government organization of the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Whereas the International Baccalaureate Program is commissioned by the United Nations, made in Europe, and at odds with the principles of America's founding. Whereas the International Baccalaureate Program goal is to create global citizens as opposed to American citizens. Whereas the International Baccalaureate Program promotes the Marxist ideology of social justice. Whereas the International Baccalaureate affiliates the United Nations Earth Charter. Whereas various international baccalaureate programs align with those of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Whereas the International Baccalaureate Program turns local curriculum, the International Baccalaureate Program turns local control of curriculum to the Geneva-based International Baccalaureate Organization, a nonprofit Swiss foundation under Swiss law. Be it resolved that the Montgomery County Republican Party, 1, calls the Magnolia ISD the only ISD in the county to officially have implemented the United Nations programs to cease with this implementation. 2, calls all Texas independent school districts to stop.
Sir, your time is up.
Thank you.
And our last speaker is John Webb.
Howdy. My name is John Webb. I'm one of your neighbors from right up the road. I got 3 beautiful daughters. One that's graduated from Montgomery ISD, Lake Creek High School. I've got one that's in high school at Montgomery ISD. And I've also got another one that's in their junior high program. I actually come today because I am a precinct chair for Precinct 90 for the Republican Party. We just heard from Mr. Ken, who has said that there was a resolution that was passed by the Republican Party 2 months ago. That resolution was not on the agenda, but got heavy-barreled, pushed by Ginger Russell. And then, as a precinct chair, you're supposed to be able to give information, help educate. So she's in a quorum trying to educate us about the ID program. I had no idea what it was, being from Montgomery. But I'll tell you what, she made these accusations that this program is Marxist, socialist, it's going to ruin the world and make Texas go down the tubes. So the first thing I did is I got on the phone with my school board. Hey, what is this thing? Well, it sounds like an AP program on steroids. It helps students get ready for college. So I'm sitting here wondering, why would I have a precinct chair push in a quorum information in a very manipulative way? And I will tell you, at the next Republican Party Executive Committee meeting, we're going to be asking these questions. Because I do hope it's just pure ignorance on her part.
That's enough about one person.
Excuse me.
That's enough, John.
I will promise you this, actions have consequences.
It sure does.
And we will be addressing this at the next Republican Party meeting. I will tell you, there are actions being had right now to determine what the ID program is. And I'll tell you, that young man and that young lady, that was an excellent topics what they spoke upon. And that's exactly what all 100 precinct chairs need to have heard, because I stood up in that meeting and said, let's table this resolution so we can do a committee and actually find out what this really is. Since 2012, Ginger Russell has had a vendetta against people on this school board. And I will promise you this. We will not let certain people take a personal vendetta into the Republican Party and make it irrelevant. Guys, as a neighbor, we're very proud of you. And I tell you, my school board is very interested. I have new members on my school board that got elected in November. We didn't even have the Houston Rodeo Art School program, the scholarship program in our school district. We're starting to get that pushed, and the IB is now being looked at. Thank you.
So that was our last speaker. We're going to move on to our consent agenda. This portion of the agenda consists of items to be routine and will be enacted by one motion unless separate discussion is requested. I need a motion that we approve consent agenda items 5A through D. I think Joe was first. I'll give Gary second in that. All in favor? All right. Okay, guys, I appreciate y'all staying here. We have a bunch of whereases I'm going to read for y'all, but we really appreciate what you do. I would hope everybody would feel the same way. So I want to read this and thank you from the bottom of my heart for keeping our community safe and for doing a job that unfortunately has become thankless in parts of the country. And it is not that way here. And I hope all you guys always feel that from this community and from this board, because you keep our kids safe, you keep us safe, and I can't thank you enough. And you put your lives on the line every day. And none of us that sat up here do that, and the people that walked out don't either. So I appreciate what you do, and let me read this. It says loud, right? I won't read that loud. All right, so the Board of Trustees of the Magnolia Independent School District, resolution recognizing and commending Montgomery County Constable Office Precinct 5. Whereas the Montgomery County Constable Office, and specifically Precinct 5 constables, serves the area of the Magnolia Independent School District, MISD. Whereas the constables in Magnolia ISD share a common goal to best ensure the safety and security of our students, staff, schools, and the community of Magnolia, recognizing that safety and security is critical for a successful education environment. Whereas the Magnolia ISD and the constables have collaborated for over 20 years for properly trained officers to serve as school resource officers at all MISD schools and at school events, thereby increasing school safety and allowing for positive interactions between students and officers. Whereas in 2018, the constables agreed to increase officer resources to the MISD for a total of 18 officers across each of our campuses. Whereas the Magnolia ISD values the ongoing professional relationship it has with the constables for the betterment of our community. Whereas the Magnolia ISD recognizes the unique challenges school environments entail for law enforcement and wish to formally commend the constables for the continuous training and collaboration for constant safety improvements while also serving as role models in our schools. And whereas the Magnolia ISD seeks to publicly recognize the officers and their commitment to allow our students to excel in a safe environment. Now therefore it will be resolved by the board that the board finds that the statements set forth in the preamble to this resolution are accurate and adopted into the resolution. The board hereby formally recognizes Precinct 5 constables under the leadership of Constable Chris Jones for their diligent work, commitment to the safety and security of Magnolia ISD, and the long-term relationship Magnolia ISD shares with the constables. Adopted by the vote of the majority of the members of the Board of Trustees of Magnolia ISD present and voting at an open meeting of the board on the second day of August 2021, which a quorum was present. So does anybody want to say anything before I will need a resolution, but does anybody want to add to that?
Gentlemen, ladies, I'd just like to tell you all that we cannot tell you how much we appreciate you. Like one of the ladies who is speaking here, I'm blessed enough to travel around the world and kind of see what the world has to offer. And you gentlemen and ladies are the best of what the world has to offer. And you allow people like me to travel and not be here, and yet I know my family is safe. I know our school district's safe. I know our kids are safe. And we cannot thank you enough, because when something's going wrong, who do you call? You call a hero. And honest to goodness, that's what every one of you are. And we appreciate everything you do. And we just want you to know how much we love you and support you, and how much we think of you.
I just wanted to say it is an absolute honor to have all of y'all here with us tonight. Thank you. I just echo everything that Joe just said. thank you for all that you do for us and for our kids and for our families. We really appreciate you.
And I just want to say, when I read in the classrooms, you may not notice I'm in the schools, but I see all of you. And I see how those kids look up to you. When I come into schools and you guys are up front high-fiving the kids and tying shoelaces on the playground, I've seen that. I see when, some of the kids are in the half-day program, and I've seen you help the kid crying, tripping in the hallway, picking him up with his backpack and helping him get on the right bus. I see that. And I am just so proud that you guys are in our schools. And I know the kids look up to you, and I think you're having a great impact on our community and how they see law enforcement because of you in our schools. Thank you very much for being here.
Okay, one last thing to echo. I know that each of you get paid for what you do, but what you are doing is a calling, and you could be operating in a lot of capacities and still have the same badge on. And we were overwhelmed as parents, all sitting up here when we started this program, at how many people applied. They didn't apply because they wanted to sit in the air conditioning. They didn't apply because it was a cush job, because it is a hard job, and you guys have 1,000 kids in your care each and every day, and we know that you don't take that lightly, but you love on them, and you signed up to do this particular assignment because you love the children in those schools, and that is exactly who I would want to put in charge of my kids, is somebody who is as trained as you are to do everything that you are trained to do to protect them. And the people you really want to protect are the kids in those four walls on all of our campuses, and we just can't thank you enough.
We have one of our brand new reporters with us, Chandler France, is that correct? He's with us from the Impact News. So Chandler, I want to just give you a flash report here, we really appreciate these men and women that are in uniform, but they look a little different than maybe our teachers because they wear a uniform. But I want you to hear, they have become, in the 2 years, they have become part of our Magnolia ISD family. Mm-hmm. They are part of us. And I just want to thank y'all so much for what you do every day to make those schools a safe place. And beyond that, just what you do to help make the schools work. You're just a part of it. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Again, you're a part of our family, and we wanted to honor you, but we wanted to honor you the fact that it is law enforcement, and that something special about Magnolia ISD that we're going to stand up and say thank you, because it's what we value in this district. But again, we appreciate it, and we stepped out 2 years ago and decided to put an officer in every school because that's what we believe was the right thing to do. And it has bared out that it has been absolutely the right thing to do because of the relationships we've had with all of you. And I know Chris wasn't able to make it, but tell him thank you so much for he found the right men and women to be in those spots. So, but anyway, thank y'all so much for what you do for us.
All right. If there's nothing else, then there's no further questions or comments. I'll need a motion. We approve the resolution as presented. Christy, Sonia, so Christy first, Sonia second. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you guys again.
Thank you all.
And if you guys need to slip out, we understand. We'll set a tax rate later on without you, but you're certainly welcome to stay. But
all right. Next up, we've got review of 2020 investment report, first, second, and third quarters. Dr. Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Adcox. More finance one. All right, so tonight I wanted to give you just a brief report for reporting purposes only of the first, second, and third quarter investment reports for this fiscal year. Obviously, the climate is challenging as it relates to interest return and has gotten more challenging, but we continue to maintain our approach with our investment pools and our depository bank, where it has traditionally been favorable as well. And so we've maintained that approach. I do believe with some recent changes in our depository where we've ended some of them, the more favorable return on overnight investments that we had available, that we're going to be looking at some new options very soon, and with Ms. Jackson's help as well. So, but anyhow, for the, you'll have to forgive me, I didn't print this out. I need to go see Dr. Moffitt, I guess. So for quarter one, you'll see in the fourth column, for the quarter, we earned $22,240. The average rate of return is in the right-hand column. And then the T-bill rates for 4-week, 13-week, 26 and 52-week are at the bottom of the page, which are obviously very, very low. So in this quarter one, obviously we try to attempt to maintain our balances, our depository, given the return of 0.4. Of course, you can see that in comparison to the previous year, which was 0.8%. So again, challenging as the year rolled by. In comparison, though, to our pools that were earning much lower than that. So again, interest for quarter one was $22,240. For quarter two, obviously, as the year goes on, we have some more money in the bank with our tax deposits and so forth. So we have more money to work with in quarters 2 and 3, but however, the average return went down substantially because of our depository contract and also just the climate, if you will. They were no longer able to continue to maintain the very favorable cushion or floor that we had, excuse me. But however, we did earn $19,800 for the quarter, and so again, that is quarter two. You can see the T-bill rates at the bottom of the page for comparison purposes. Then finally, in quarter three, very similar. Again, you can see the rates on the far right continuing to basically follow the T-bill rates, and that's the climate that we get into when we're dealing with pools and very, very safe and very, very liquid interest vehicles. But that is something that we're going to look at to attempt to maximize our return, in particular with some of our debt service fund balances and things of that nature, where we have some cushion for a few years. But for the quarter, quarter three earns a little over $16,000. Question on that? Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
All right.
And again, that's just for reporting purposes only.
So that, to his point, that item is for review only, so we don't need to take any action on it. So I think you're still up.
I'm up, yes, sir.
Consider and approve resolution for employee pay related to disruptions caused by and due to COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, sir. Obviously, we touched on this in the budget workshop earlier, but we're constantly trying to retain the best and brightest talent that we have. And in doing so, we believe it's important to look at those one-time incentive pays that we've sort of become accustomed to. Obviously, we have the dollars available with some of the extra money that we receive from the federal government in the form of stimulus dollars. So, and when it is related to that funding source, the timing doesn't mean near as much as it does with our general fund for adoption and whatnot. So, if the board approves it, we are recommending $1,000 to be paid for all employees immediately. We will process that if I can get Ms. Jackson to nod payroll-wise. We're going to get that on the August 15th payroll, so in less than 2 weeks, we would like to recommend a $1,000 bonus, or excuse me, incentive pay.
Does anybody have any?
That sounds great.
All right. We need a motion that we approve the resolution for employee pay as presented. Motion by Sonia, seconded by Kelly. All in favor?
Thank you.
All right, you're still up. Consider and approve resolution extending the depository contract with Woodforest National Bank.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Cox. And thank you all for the approval. Our work employees deserve something along those lines. So the next item on the agenda, every biennium we must consider to either extend our depository contract if we have that option, or go out for bids. And this year we are recommending the final extension with Woodforest Bank. We've got a good relationship with them. Up until recently, the terms were more favorable on overnight deposits, but we're going to do our best to see if we can renegotiate some of that as well. Obviously, the services they perform and the locations are unmatched versus the competitors, and so based on that, we're recommending the final 2-year extension with them. So we will be required to put it out on the street 2 years.
Anybody have anything? All right, I'll need a motion that we approve the resolution extending the depository contract with Woodforest National Bank for 2021 through 2023 biennium. Travis, motion, seconded Joe. All in favor? Motion passes. You are still the man, Dr. Morris.
I'm here, yes, sir. Consider and accept excess collections for 2020 debt service and certification for debt service collection rate for 2021-22. So, the front end of that, as part of the truth and taxation requirements from the Texas Comptroller, when we are prepared to adopt a tax rate each year, we have to certify a collection rate in order to be transparent, if you will, based on our anticipated collections. Each year, we've approved a 100% collection rate, and up until this year, when you have had approved 100%, had you brought in, if you will, or brought in revenue that exceeded that mark, it did not qualify as excess. But legislature changed some of that this past session, and so we did actually have some excess collections on our debt service, which obviously will apply to our debt service payment this coming year. It was a little over $300,000. So on the first part of that, we are accepting excess collections for 2020. And the second part of that, again, on the front end of the taxing year, we're approving a collection rate, yet again, of 100%. Be glad to answer any questions on that.
All right. Then I will need a motion that we accept the excess collections for 2020 debt service and certification for debt service collection rate for 2021, 2022 as submitted. I've got Christy and Kelly and Joe and Chuck. All in favor? It passes. All right, still you, the tax rate.
Yes, sir. Consider and approve a proposed tax rate. And obviously, we talked about this in budget workshop, so I won't go into extreme detail. But as a reminder, we're proposing a rate that is 8.7 cents lower than the prior year. Part of that is driven by M&O tax rate compression. The other is the ability to meet our debt service needs as well. Again, this is the slide I showed you earlier, but I think it's important to point out the far two right columns, where the average taxable value went up $15,483, but with the decrease in the tax rate, the average homeowner or taxpayer will pay roughly $60 less a year. So this again is not an adoption. This is just approval of the proposed rate to be published in the notice in the newspaper. We'll have the adoption after the public hearing on August 23rd.
All right, so I'll need a motion that we approve the proposed total tax rate of $1.2172 with a maintenance and operations tax rate of 0.8777 per 100 of taxable value and a debt rate of 0.3395 per $100 of taxable value as presented.
Mr. Hancock, can I just mention something right there? It appears the language that we have on the blurb or for your agenda purposes did not take into consideration the change in the INS rate. So I just wanted to point that out. I think you mentioned 33 cents, but we did change that to 30.95. So the total tax rate is actually 1.18.
And that's.
7.2.
And that's 8.7 cents lower.
Yes, ma'am, it is 8.7 cents. And again, I apologize, I think we had that initial language prior to decreasing the INS rate, prior to having the certified values.
Okay. So.
I just wanted to point that out.
So the debt rate of 0.3095 per $100 of taxable value.
Yes, sir.
Is what we're motioning for. So do I have a motion on that? Got Travis, motion by Travis, seconded by Gary. All in favor? Motion passes. All right, then we need to consider and approve a date and a time for budget and tax rate hearing.
Yes, sir. Another truth and taxation component. Takes official action to set the date and time. The board is prepared for this, but we are recommending 6:30 p.m. Monday, August 23rd at the Magnolia Event Center to be part of the regular meeting.
Anybody? Okay. So I need a motion that we approve to set the date and time for a public hearing to discuss the 2021-2022 proposed budget and tax rates for Monday, August 23rd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. at the Magnolia ISD Event Center located at 11659 FM 1488. Motion by, we got Sonia, seconded by Kelly. All in favor? Passes.
Ms. Hinkle will remind all the board prior to that meeting to be there on time.
Be at the right place.
Where it is, and where it is.
Hey.
Event center.
That's called a Travis, if you show up at
Once.
All right. I think you're off the right seat now. All right, so next up we have Dr. Bullock, review of TASB policy update 117.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Adcox, members of the board. This is Board Policy Update 117. This is a first read, just as a reminder to the board. This is for your review only this evening. If you have questions between the presentation tonight or in the middle of the presentation, as the case may be, or before the next board meeting, please let me know. This will appear on your agenda the next board meeting as an action item, but for this evening, it's a pretty simple policy update. This deals with 3 local policies. 2 of them I want to discuss kind of together with you. It's CH local and CB local. Both of those policies deal with purchasing, specifically purchasing and acquisition with CH local, and facilities and construction where it deals with purchasing with CB local. And the change here is in response to some of the weather problems we've had over the last several months. This changes in the case of an emergency and grants the superintendent authority to make purchases up to $300,000 in the case of an emergency, knowing that a contract would come to you guys to approve for the following board meeting. This is something being changed across the state in response to the freezes and kind of difficult spots several communities were put in, so that we could move a little bit faster moving, maybe should we run into something in the future. This does not change any of the competitive purchasing requirements that allow people to have a fair shot at contracts, but it would allow us to move faster and would still provide oversight from you guys at the following board meeting. The other change is really, I use the term cosmetic. This is DEC local. It deals with leaves and absences of employees. If you flip through your packet, you will see large sections of language cross through. What this does is take a lot of the kind of minutia of the rules about leaves and absences out of policy and puts it back in local regulations. So these are things that will be discussed in our employee handbook and communicated up front, but they'll no longer be spelled out specifically in policy, so that as the rules with these things change, we don't have to continually come back to you with kind of that granular level of things. So those are really the changes with the policy update. Are there any questions or concerns at this point?
So like Jason stated, the item is for review only, so there's no action needed on our part.
Yes, sir.
But it sounds like you're just moving that around.
For the leaves and absences, absolutely. Yes, sir. The substantive changes on the purchasing, but that is only in case of emergencies.
And how are we defining an emergency?
Very carefully.
Just stay happy.
No, I really think it's when a disaster declaration comes
Okay.
To the area like you did recently. Not on a whim, I assure you.
Okay.
I'll call Chuck and let him know.
We just had a disaster.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Other questions? Okay, thank you, guys.
All right. So like Dr. King, review of the 2021-2022 Student Handbook.
Well, good evening, Dr. Stevens, Mr. Adcock, members of the board. As you said, it is a review of the student handbook, and it is no recommendation needed. It's just a review tonight. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have during the presentation or afterwards. As we've had a legislative session going on, there's been a few bills passed that have required some changes to our student handbook, and I'm just going to talk about a few of note tonight. The first is, you'll notice in the handbook, the first few pages do not have COVID interventions in them, as they did last year. So that will allow us to have a much more normal school year than we did last year with all the interventions that were in place. So those have simply just been removed from the student handbook for this year. The second set of changes deal with attendance. There was a Senate Bill 289 that basically now allows a student one day to be absent to go and get their learner's permit, and another to get their driver's license. So there you have it. And then House Bill 699, it requires school district to excuse an absence if the absence is a result of a serious or life-threatening illness. So of course, the student would have to bring back certification from a physician in order for us to excuse that absence, but that's a change in the legislature. The third change deals with promotion and retention of students. It's Senate Bill 1697 that has now given parents the ability to opt for their child K through 3 to repeat the previous grade level, and to also repeat the grades 4 through 8 if they so choose. And lastly, it allows for them to opt for their child to take any courses for high school credit. They can repeat that course for which the student was enrolled only in the 2020-2021 school year. So those are the changes of note from the legislature. Are there any questions?
Are we hearing of any kids that are wanting to opt to repeat a class or repeat a grade?
There are some. From what I've gathered so far, it's what we've dealt with typically as far as a parent saying, I didn't feel like my child was successful last year. It doesn't. Nothing's come to me where they've invoked their House bill rights
It's the
retain their
typical.
child.
It's the typical that we've had before.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions?
All right. This item is for review only, so no action is needed.
Thank you.
Thanks. Rob? There he is.
Mine, of course, requires action.
Yes.
Board, President Adcox, that's a different way of saying that. We're here tonight to talk about the consideration and approval of the Code of Conduct. As Dr. King just explained, there was a lot of legislation changes, a lot of little tiny bills. For the purpose of the Code of Conduct, nothing changed in terms of process. So those processes that remove a student from into ISS, OSS, DAP, JJP, those processes didn't change. What changed in the legislation were little tiny things that impact the glossary definitions, or such as, we're going to redefine what a firearm suppressor is, and we're going to redefine fentanyl into its own drug class. Little things, but those are just charge related. They don't affect the process of how we deal with kids in terms of discipline. The management techniques that we use that are stated in the front portion for lower level offenses, whether that's dealing with timeout or having a counselor talk to the student, or, hey, let's take a little lunch dehaul, whatever we need to do to help students kind of learn the right behavior, those things have not changed. The process for how we place students in DAP haven't changed. and processes for even further law enforcement related items, those have not changed at all. So as we bring you the code of conduct, notice there have been a lot of little tiny minor changes in definitions of items, but none in terms of how we process items. So are there any questions on that?
All right, if there are no questions, then I will need a motion that we approve the 2021-2022 Student Code of Conduct as presented. Motion by Gary, seconded by Joe. All in favor? All right.
Thank you. And I have the next one, so let's change gears from a consequential basis to something that we're really helping kids out. So 2 years ago, we moved and came to the board with a resolution for our optional flexible school day program. We were able to use that. Of course, COVID hit us in the spring, so we didn't get a full year of kind of looking at the data, but it really helped us change some kids. And the reason we do that is it helps us recover dropouts. It helps us work with kids. If you're recovering kids who dropped out and you're trying to get them back to get their diploma, and I know you guys are familiar with alpha graduations, and sometimes we're dealing with some kids who've been through a lot of things in life. You're working with kids around independent work schedules because they're already paying their own bills. In some cases, they're already parents. We've even had a few already married kids graduate from Alpha Academy. So you're dealing with a lot of wide range of varieties. So what this program does is moves us from daily attendance by period to attendance by minutes and changes how we can address those minutes into a much more sophisticated way at Alpha that allows us to minimize those but maximize our return on the process because we're dealing with credit hours there. We're not dealing with necessarily, your seat in your backside of the seat. So then COVID hit last year, and so even though we passed this last year, we wound up having to take traditional attendance because of how ADA was worked in the middle of the COVID crisis. So now we're back, excited for a full year of data, excited to get that all done, and we bring that to you again to approve. We have to offer a time that you guys can have time to ask questions in an open board meeting in order for us to get this moved on with the state and the waiver for the minutes to work. So we have to do that with you, and that's what we're bringing to you tonight. So if you have any questions or anything like that on the optional flex day attendance, I'll be glad to answer any of those that I can for you.
We have anything we can do to get those kiddos, help them get through that program and get them graduated.
We've been very blessed. Our numbers have gone up tremendously in the last 3 years with graduates there. We're doing between the winter graduation and spring graduation between 80 to 90 students a year. And a lot of that's hard work staff on that part. I give credit to Mr. Cooper and his teachers over there that are working with kids and doing everything they can to get kids across the stage to help them in life.
Awesome program. All right, I will need a motion that we approve the optional flexible school day program application for Alpha Academy. Motion by Kelly, seconded by Sonia. All in favor?
Thank you.
All right, I think that's the end of this part. All right. At this time, the board will now recess to move into closed executive session for the purposes permitted by pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.082 and 551.0821. Hear and discuss parent/student level 3 grievance appeal filed under board policy FNG pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071 and consult legal counsel.
Well done, sir.
It is, I took my glasses off, 9:28. The board is now in open session. Do I have a motion regarding the appeal?
Mr. President, I have a motion. I move that the board confirm the administration's finding on the level 2 grievance, and we further request that the administration continue with the efforts that allow Zipporah and all students to have a positive experience in their high school career.
Do I have a second? Christie seconds. All in favor? All right, motion passes. Now, by this one. We're going to adjourn again to go pursuant to government recess and executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, consultation with an attorney pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.072, discussion of purchase, sale, exchange of value or property, and pursuant to Government Code 551.074, personnel discussions, recommendations. I don't want that. This is,
I don't want that.
Let's see. That's in a row from that, so.
Just say the time.
All right, the time is 10:37, and I need a motion that we adjourn this meeting. Motion by everyone. I'll go Christie. And seconded by Sonia. All in favor? We are done.